Hello out there, welcome to the No Shit Cast. I'm your host, Matt Frazier. A little bit different show today, folks. So anybody that follows the podcast and knows me also knows that I'm a musician as well as an engineer and some of the other shit that I do. So I thought I would try something a little different today. I wanted to... I'm traveling, I'm on the road. I decided to take the podcast equipment with me this time and, kind of so I could keep doing this. I have a lot of engineering work that I'm doing here that kind of backed up on me. And I've been on the road for almost 3 weeks and no end in sight. But anyway, I wanted to try to do something a little bit different this time and talk about, being a musician and playing music and things like that. And what it entails and that kind of stuff. So what I'm going to do today is I've actually got some tracks that I've recorded over the years here that I guess are the ones I'm kind of fond of, and I wanted to talk a little bit about how these tracks came into being and what was sort of the inspiration behind some of them and things like that. And I'm going to sample those into the podcast here today for you so that we can kind of listen to them and talk about them. And sort of the zenith of where they came from and that kind of stuff. So, playing music and being a musician of any kind of level or of any kind of level of accomplishment and success and things like that is kind of an interesting thing. It's really weird because I think a lot of people get into music and stuff like that because they are looking for some sort of fame or success or I don't know what. Everybody kind of has a different motivation. The problem with it is that being a professional musician is actually a kind of a, I don't know. It's not a very fun thing. It's not. It's number one. It's not easy to do. And being a musician of any kind of competency is not any kind of guarantee of success, even of being a musician. And I think that's kind of true with being artists, and certainly true with podcasters and things like that as well. So it's something you got to kind of do because you enjoy doing it, and it has to be something that you pursue because you love it, kind of thing, and not necessarily because you're pursuing it strictly for the purposes of some sort of financial success or fame or anything like that. And that's kind of what I do. I don't actually I don't sell music. I don't try to make a living off of music or anything like that. I've played in various bands over the years, and it's something that I've kind of always done. I've been playing guitar since I was about 6 years old. I think it's when I first started playing guitar. It's just something that I've done my whole life, and I also play percussion, drums and things like that as well, some keyboard and stuff. But guitar's kind of been my instrument of choice for years. It's probably one of the most versatile instruments that you can, pick up and learn how to play. Technically speaking, it's actually a very easy instrument to play once you kind of figure it out. The difficulty of learning how to play guitar or playing it at any kind of success level is getting past the physical aspect of it, which is that playing guitar is actually kind of painful especially when you first start. So I have some opinions on playing guitar, and a lot of people start, and a lot of instructors start teaching students and things like that on acoustic guitars. And my opinion on that is that's actually wrong. It's backwards. If you want to learn how to play guitar, my recommendation to everybody is that you actually learn how to play guitar on an electric guitar first. And the reason for that is because electric guitars, generally speaking, are much easier physically to play than acoustic guitars. Now, the theory behind a lot of instructors and things like that with having people learn on acoustic guitars is that they are harder to play, they fret harder. And the idea here is that it would help you build up the calluses on your fingertips and things like that faster, and it gives you, your hand strength and things like that faster because it's harder. I actually think that that's the wrong approach. And the reason I think that's the wrong approach is because a lot of people quit before they ever get to a point where they can even start enjoying playing. And that's one of the main reasons why I think that you shouldn't start with an acoustic guitar. You should start with an electric guitar. And the other reason being is that an acoustic guitar, although they do make electric acoustics in the sense that it's still an acoustic guitar, but you can plug it into an amplifier or plug it into effects and things like that. But again, it's still difficult to play comparatively speaking. So my recommendation for people is to start with an electric, and it's so much more versatile because you have to plug it in. It gives you access to things like effects and different types of things you can do to the sound and the tone, and you can just get a lot more out of the instrument other than just that warm, open sort of acoustic sound. Now, I'm not against acoustic guitars. I own several, and I play them, but they're more situational in the sense that depending on who I'm playing for or with and things like that, it determines which guitar I use. So, for instance, if I'm going to be doing the cliched sort of campfire sing-along kind of thing, I'm not going to drag out my Fender Stratocaster and a Marshall amp and a generator, I suppose, to pull that off. Of course, I'm going to take an acoustic guitar with me and use that instead. But the overall point that I'm making is that the electric guitar is just so much more versatile than an acoustic guitar is. So my recommendation is that you start with electrics, play it, get you some effects, things like this, because it'll hold your interest longer and it's easier to play. So that's kind of my 2 cents on acoustics versus electrics and learning to play guitar and music and stuff like that. Now, some of these tracks I got coming up here, anybody that's listened to the show regularly, one of the tracks, or the intro track that I use for the bumper music for my show is me. That's me playing guitar. I recorded that myself, and it was kind of I liked the track, and I liked the way it kind of came out, so I decided to use it, as my bumper music, and I added some sound effects, the lightning and thunder sounds and stuff like that after the fact in my audio software. And so that became the bumper music for the show. And I have several other tracks. And now these tracks are, I've been recording them for years. So in all total, I have about 81, 82 tracks that I've recorded. And the ones I'm going to kind of sample into the podcast for you here today are the ones that I kind of think were the better tracks, or the ones that I enjoy listening to myself anyway, more than others. And I did this kind of as a way to sort of record my progress as I was teaching myself to not only play guitar, but because like I said, I've been playing since I was like 6 years old. But in teaching myself how to play like rock lead guitar, and my progress as I was learning technically how to play the instrument, understanding the theory behind it and the music and stuff like that. So these are all these tracks that I'm sampling in here today are going to be of different genres of music, different styles of music, but they all kind of turn me on in a different way, or touch me in a different sort of way. And I just wanted to kind of share these with you. So the first track I'm gonna do here is what you just heard a little bit of. It is like the bumper music for the show. It's the intro and exit music that I use for the show. Though the inspiration behind this is I'm a huge Ted Nugent fan, the Motor City Madman. I like the way he plays. I like the way his music sounds. I like the aggressiveness of it and kind of how dark sometimes his music can be. And I kind of wanted to do something that was in that same vein of music. So the Ted Nugent track would be Stranglehold, and I'm a big fan of that song. It's very dark. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the subject matter necessarily, but I like the music, and I kind of like where it goes and sort of the feeling that it inspires and stuff like that. So I went out, and now here's what I do, and this is the easiest thing to do, and I highly recommend this for anybody that's learning to play or is learning how to play lead guitar and things like that, is I go out to YouTube and I find these, they're called backing tracks, okay? Now, people on YouTube, there's Jesus, there's got to be hundreds of thousands of these. So whatever genre of music that you sort of resonate with or that you enjoy, you can find a backing track for that on YouTube. It's out there. And I recommend that people kind of play these backing tracks and play over them. It's kind of like having your own band in a box, if you will. And it makes it really easy for you to, or a person who's learning how to play, to kind of continue to, because you can rewind it indefinitely, right? You can play it over and over again, and you can keep playing over these backing tracks or accompanying them. And it gives you that ability to really groove the techniques. The way we used to do this before backing tracks, before we had, things like YouTube and access to these types of things, is you would have to get a bunch of people together, a band, and they would have to play, and you would have to play along with them, and that's kind of how you learned. But the problem with that is bands don't like to play the same thing over and over and over again, hours at a time, several hundred times or whatever, until you kind of get it grooved in the way you want to play against it. And the only way you could kind of get that was you had to be in a professional recording studio. So the band would kind of come into the studio, they would lay down the bass tracks, or the fundamental tracks, if they will, and then the different musicians and virtuoso musicians and stuff like this would then they would play that tape back in the studio, and you would play over it. Well, if you didn't have access to high-end studio time and equipment and stuff like that, it was really, really hard to do this. I mean, you could do it, you could record it down back in the old days to a cassette or something like that and play it, but still it was a lot more cumbersome than it is today. So what I do is I kind of just surf YouTube, and I find backing tracks, and I listen to them, and I'm like, oh, I kind of dig that. I think I can play to it. And then I would take these tracks and I sample them down into my digital audioware, my software. It's the same software that I use to record the podcast. And I play it back, and I play over it. And I use my effects system. I have a Line 6, which is a company that manufactures things like amplifiers and effects systems that you can plug into computers and stuff like that. And I use that, and I would I'd plug my guitar into it, and I'd be able to listen to both the backing track and my guitar at the same time. And then I can actually record that down through my digital audioware. I use Reaper Pro, and I sort of just marry them together. Now there's some work that goes into this to kind of make it sound decent. You have to scoop the mids, which means you want to go in with an EQ and sort of EQ things out so that it leaves space in the audio envelope for your guitar, and stuff like that. But those are all techniques you sort of pick up. I think the only way to do this is to actually do it. You can't. When the people make the backing tracks, they make them to sound as good as they can. So if there's not a lead guitar or lead instrument, they don't scoop that sort of out of the EQ. So I would take these tracks a lot of times. I go in, I add effects to them, and I rebalance them and things like that to make more space in the audio envelope for the guitar and such. And to pull these together, and then I mix them all down, and then I produce them and I put them out. Now, most of these tracks are backing tracks that like I said, that I sample off of YouTube. So some of them I actually did all of the music, but most of them are backing tracks. They're just so well done, and there's just so much material out there to pull from that it was faster for me. I would go find a backing track that I like, and I just play over it. And this particular track, the bumper music that starts the show, is that it's a backing track, and it's much longer than you hear in the intro, and there's no sound effects and stuff like that in it. So again, this is a kind of a tip of the hat towards Ted Nugent and the song Stranglehold. The track itself is actually called Velvet Choker. So I just want to sample these down into the podcast, kind of talk about them a little bit. And these are kind of the high, I guess you would call them the high definition or the high quality audio versions of them. All of these tracks, actually all of my tracks, are on YouTube, or I'm sorry, they're on Facebook. The Facebook page is called Rufus Plays the Blues. And it was just something, like I said, that I started because I wanted to record these things and sort of put them out there as a timeline, so that I can go back and sort of see how I've progressed over the years in producing music and putting songs together and things like that, and I can go back and re-listen to them later. So it's all out there. You can sort of see the painfully slow progress towards teaching myself to play much better lead guitar and understanding the guitar technically and things like that. But the first track I'm going to play for you, you've heard a little bit of here. It's called Velvet Choker, and give it a listen. So that's Velvet Choker, folks. Like I said, it's a track that was inspired for me. The sound, I guess the groove I was kind of going for there was like a Ted Nugent sort of feel, Stranglehold sort of feel. Big shout out to Ted Nugent. Huge fan of his guitar playing. Not necessarily a fan of his political philosophy necessarily, but definitely a fan of him as a musician and a very accomplished musician, going all the way back to like the Amboy Dukes and stuff like that. And that's sort of, like I said, was the zenith of where I came up with that and the feeling or the spirit of the song that I was trying to capture. And I was really happy with it. I mean, happy enough that I decided to use that as, like I said, the bumper music for the show here, the No Shit Cast. So, like I said, big fan of Ted and thought that was a great track. Now, the interesting part about this is the key that kind of unlocked lead guitar for me was, believe it or not, was a spreadsheet that I found. And you can Google this. It's available out there on different blogs and stuff like that. The spreadsheet's called scalesandmodes.xls. And the way that I think the best way to learn how to sort of play lead guitar is to learn how to play in the scale called pentatonic minor. And it's a five note progression, thus the penta. And the great thing about learning pentatonic minor, and that should be, it's also referred to a lot incorrectly as the blues scale, because it's not. The blues scale actually has another note in it, and I didn't realize that until I got the spreadsheet. But the spreadsheet's great because what it shows you is so in the spreadsheet you can select what key the song is in and what mode you want to play in. And there are a lot of, and the different sounds that you get when you're playing music, whether it be maybe, like in that particular song, it has kind of an Egyptian or an Arabic sort of feel to the song. And that's a mode. And the reason why when I teach anybody how to play guitar, or I suggest to them, different tools to use to learn how to play guitar, I always tell them, look, the first thing you need to learn is how to play pentatonic minor. And when you learn that scale, it's sort of like a neat foundation. It gives you at least it gives you the bass notes that you can play in pretty much any key. And then when you actually add mode to that, basically all it becomes is sort of a variation of pentatonic minor. So you're adding notes or you're subtracting notes from what you already kind of know. So like I said, I always recommend that people start, when they learn to play guitar, that you start, and the first thing that you learn is pentatonic minor. And the great thing about that is pentatonic minor opens up sort of the door to playing the blues. The blues, you add the blue note. It's one note. You add it into pentatonic minor, and there's a couple other notes you can change around and stuff like that. But fundamentally speaking, if you play pentatonic minor with the blue note, you're going to sound good. And as long as you play those notes, and only those notes, you won't be wrong per se. And what I mean by wrong is it won't sound wrong to people that are listening to you play necessarily. And the great thing about this spreadsheet is earlier when I said in the podcast here, what I said was actually, technically speaking, learning to play guitar is very simple, because you learn to play lead guitar by learning shapes. You break there's only 12 frets on a guitar and then after the 12th fret, everything you know in the first 12 frets just repeats. So it's real easy, and you break it up. I break it up into 3 separate 4-fret shapes. And once you memorize these shapes and sort of learn them, the key is what determines where you play them. So for instance, if you were playing a song, let's say in the key of A minor, your pentatonic minor scale would be fretted at the 5th fret, and that's the A note, right? So that shape that you learn to play is rooted there at the 5th fret on the guitar. Now, when you play in a different key, all you do is you just take those shapes and you move them up and down the neck according to what key you're in. So, like on a piano or a keyboard, when you learn how to play, you can't really do that. So every scale is a little different. So you have to every scale and key is a little different. So you have to memorize each and every scale depending on what key it's in. But on the guitar, it's kind of like a slide ruler. Once you learn how to play those scales, you just slide them, you just move where it's rooted up and down the neck, depending on what key you're playing in. So from that aspect, the entry point to learning how to play virtuoso is much easier than it is on something that's very chromatic like a keyboard is, and it makes it a much more simple to play. And in that particular song, I think it was either Dorian mode or Aeolian, I can't even remember now. All it is you just take that pentatonic minor scale and you just add the notes that give it that sort of Egyptian, Middle Eastern sort of feel to it that I was looking for, and it makes it really simple. So that's kind of how that gets put together, and like I said, why it's so much easier, I think, to learn how to play guitar. The hard part about learning to play guitar is not learning how to play it technically, it's physically learning how to play it, because it's a very demanding instrument physically in the aspect of that you're smashing steel strings down onto steel frets with your meaty little fingertips, and it takes a while to sort of get the calluses on your fingers built up to a point where that doesn't hurt anymore. And then there's definitely technique and things that you have to learn to be able to move around in the frets, in the scales around the frets quickly and efficiently and things like that. So it's you're not pushing a button. No dig on keyboard players. I love you guys and it's phenomenal, but it doesn't hurt. It definitely doesn't hurt the way that playing guitar hurts. So so from that aspect, that's sort of the hard part of learning to play guitar. Beyond that, if you can memorize shapes, anybody can do this. So the next track I want to talk about, and this is probably one of my most downloaded and viewed tracks, and the inspiration for this was the song "Wicked Game," believe it or not. So I tend to like to do things that melt your ears or melt your face off kind of music. I love to play really aggressive and hard and stuff. But the next song that I'm going to play for you I called it "Wicked." Because when you listen to the track, you'll hear that it kind of has that inspiration from that song "Wicked Game." And the point behind this was I wanted to spend some time really focusing on trying to play with feeling instead of aggression and nuance and stuff like this, because it's very important. Vibrato, the way you bend the strings, the way you oscillate the strings, all of these things can convey a feeling. And again, why I love guitar is it's an instrument that allows you to do that. Unlike a keyboard, you strike strings, and there's some pedals that you can use to sort of add some feeling and stuff to it, but nothing near as accessible or usable as it is on a guitar, because you can literally bend a note out of tune and back into tune on a guitar, and this allows you to kind of convey emotion and feelings and things like that you can't necessarily do on other types of instruments. So this track's called "Wicked." A lot of people love this track. It's one of my most requested and, like I said, most viewed tracks and things like that. So let's go ahead and cue this up and take a listen to this track. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun to play. And like I said, for whatever reason, that song seems to have resonated with a lot of people. I think it's in, well, I think it's in D minor or something like that. I can't even remember now. I'd have to go look it up from my original track notes and stuff. But it came out well. It's very sing-songy and sort of conveys a lot of emotion. And for whatever reason, it seems to have resonated with people. And that was back early, when I was really starting to try to play more with emotion and put more feeling and stuff into the music. And that's sort of what came out of it. Again, that's a YouTube backing track that I found out on YouTube someplace, and I sampled and then just remixed, changed the EQ and some of the different stuff to make more space for the guitar in the track. And that's what happens. So it's a fun track, good track, something I'm really proud of and feel that came out very well. And there you go. That's what happened. So now after a while of playing, I started to kind of look for more inspiration to when I recorded, and that's sort of my roadblock now. I don't record near as much music as I used to. Not for any reason that, I'm not into it anymore, or I don't like playing guitar or anything like that anymore. I just feel that I need inspiration to play to. So generally speaking, I don't even go looking for backing tracks anymore unless I have a specific purpose for it. And a lot of times that purpose comes externally. It comes from loved ones and friends and family members and things like that may be going through something or whatever. And these are the things that sort of touch me emotionally, and allows me to kind of have that artistic or inspiration to record. Now, once I get these things recorded, I always can tap back into that same inspiration emotionally, I guess, to play these things again, if I do them live or whatever. And I guess it should also be noted that one of the things that I purposely did when I recorded all this music was I made sure that they were all recorded in one take. So I didn't go back and take these and record every little piece of the song separately to get it absolutely perfect and this kind of stuff, because I feel like when you do that, you actually dehumanize the music in the sense that it doesn't become near as relatable. It sounds too perfect. It sounds too polished. And I think that the music actually loses something in that. And that's just my personal opinion. Everybody's different and record different and what they're looking for. But it's just a personal thing for me. If I cannot play it beginning to end nonstop, then it's not real. It's not good enough, and I don't record it that way. I make sure that when I do record a song, that I can record the whole thing beginning to end nonstop. So anyway, going back to the inspiration part of it, this next track is called Roxy Lady. It's for a dear friend of mine that was going through a bit of trouble in her life, and not trouble in the it was like she was having some health issues and stuff. So I was kind of worried about her, and she was a little bit down, so I wanted to try to do something that would kind of give her a pick-me-up and make her, something to listen to, and it was something that was heartfelt that I put out there for her, so that, it's a gift kind of thing. So the next track's called Roxy Lady. It's one of my favorites. It's got kind of an interesting country blues feel to it, and I'm really proud of the way this came out. So check this out. So that's Roxy Lady. Again, it's sort of a pick-me-up track. I kind of dug how it had that like weird, I call it the Sopranos break sort of in the middle of it there. That was a lot of fun. And the way that the song moves. And a lot of these, especially that one, was one where I was also sort of experimenting with giving space and letting a track breathe a little more and have the backing track sort of more prominent and less of the in-your-face kind of guitar stuff. And I really enjoyed recording that for my friend Roxanne, and she seemed to really enjoy it too. So it was a good track, and I hope you guys like that. The next track I want to talk about here is one called RB Sweet. It's kind of an homage for one of my favorite guitarists, Richie Blackmore, who's just a monster of guitar, and I wanted to sort of capture that same kind of groove feeling or energy that Richie Blackmore sort of personifies when he plays. It's very unique, and it's very easy when you hear him play that, oh yeah, that's definitely Richie Blackmore. Did I accomplish it? I guess that's kind of up to you. But that's sort of the zenith or the place I was coming from when I wanted to sort of record this track. Again, this is a bit of an homage or a tip of the hat towards one of my favorite guitarists, Richie Blackmore. And let's give this one a listen to. So I had a friend of mine tell me when he listened to that track that it sounds like Joe Satriani meets Joe Walsh, which I took as a complete compliment because I love both of those guitar players as musicians and virtuoso musicians and stuff, and songwriters. I don't know. I didn't hear it that way, but you know, everybody hears music the way they want, and it's always open to interpretation, kind of thing. So that's kind of the synopsis on that track. The next one I want to talk about here is one that I called Experience. Now I guess this is a shout out to Jimi Hendrix. It's definitely got a Hendrix feel and vibe to it. I was playing sort of that way. I was bending the notes sort of that way in here, and using the different pickups on the guitar. Specifically in certain sort of ways, the way I set the effects and everything up was driven towards kind of capturing that Jimi Hendrix sort of feel. Now, I'm not saying at all that I feel like I'm as accomplished as Jimi Hendrix or even near as good or anything like that. But this is sort of my tribute to Hendrix, and so let's give this a listen to, and I hope you guys like this. So yeah, it definitely has kind of a Hendrix vibe to it. So the kind of the history of that, or the story behind that track is, that track I think is actually the bass track or the backing track for that. I think was like 10 minutes long. So I just sort of recorded over it, just kept playing and playing and playing, and then when I actually mixed it down and decided to turn it into a track, I kind of had to find a place to stop it. So if you notice, it just sort of the track just kind of falls off there at the end, and that's why it does that. Believe it or not, is because it just keeps going on and on forever. And that's the great thing again about using YouTube backing tracks and stuff to play against, is that when the people build these tracks, that they make them so that they can practice against them. That's kind of the idea behind it. So some of them are super long, 15 minutes. Some of them I've seen some of the like the Pink Floyd stuff that I've done, which I don't have any to download or sample into the podcast here today. But some of them I think were like 22 minutes. And they really evolve and build and stuff like it. It's awesome stuff, folks. Again, if you're going to learn how to play guitar, it's the best way, I swear, by far, to learn how to play, is to kind of, pick a genre of music, something you like, learn the modes that are in that style, and then just go get these backing tracks and play until your head explodes, kind of thing, or till your fingers start bleeding, one or the other. The next track that I did here is called Repentant Soul, and the point of this track was to just play as viciously and as hard and as I could over this track. It's a phenomenal backing track again, but there's no feeling or any kind of emotion or anything behind this. It was simply just to play the shit out of the guitar. And I guess I should note, for anybody that's interested, I use an American Standard Fender Stratocaster as my primary guitar. It's my workhorse. It's the one I go back to constantly. It's an Eric Clapton autograph series, so it has the Fender Lace, the gold Fender Lace pickups and stuff like that in it. I like it because it's such a sensitive instrument. It plays very well. It's heavy, has a great sustain and stuff like that. It's like I said, it's just a workhorse thing. Hardly ever goes out of tune. I use Elixir strings, which some people would say is bad, but I just love the feel of the Elixir strings. I love the tone, the warmth of them. They never rust or corrode, and I rarely change it. They're a little more expensive than like your standard steel strings, because they're coated with like nylon or some kind of coating on them, but it keeps them from getting all rusted up and stuff like that. But like I said, they're a little more expensive, so some people don't like them. But again, this was recorded on American Standard Fender Stratocaster, and the name of the track is Repentant Soul. had a lot of fun recording that. If you actually, if you go to Facebook, like I said, the Rufus Plays the Blues page, when I record all of these, I actually video recorded them too, and then in post I take the video and the audio and I marry it up, and I made a video out of it that you can watch. And you can tell I'm having a ball playing that song. It was just a lot of fun. It was a great backing track, and I was sort of in that kind of mood that day. It was an interesting recording, and again, I had a lot of fun recording that. The next one I'll play for you here, this is another one of those tracks that sort of had some emotional inspiration of my brother was going through some rough times at the time. His best friend had actually just died in a motorcycle accident, and he and I guess, had been talking a lot about sort of, life and what it means and stuff like that. And one of the things that we had been discussing was, how life is kind of a zero-sum game, and that it just, you don't get to take anything with you, so make sure you live every bit of it as good as you can, because you just never know when it's going to be over. And again, like I said, his best friend actually got in a motorcycle wreck and ended up dying from it. And he was kind of in a bad place. So I put this track together for him. The name of the track is Zero Sum Games. The guitar is placed way back in the track here, and I did that on purpose, just because I really wanted more of the emotion of the backing track to kind of come through as well, and let that sort of breathe a lot more in this track. So again, the name of the track is Zero Sum Games, and it was dedicated to my brother, who was going through kind of a rough time after having just lost his best friend. So again, like I said, it was dedicated kind of to my brother who was going through a tough time, and a lot of music now for me is about finding the right inspiration to record and to put music together. I'm going to wrap up here with one last track. This is sort of, where it all begins for me and ends for me, I guess, is everything I do musically, especially on the guitar, is sort of always rooted in the blues. I find playing the blues to be very therapeutic, and it really kind of helps me, I don't know, chill the fuck out, stuff like that. So the last track I actually called Therapy. If you're interested in these, folks, if you guys want, to download these and have them so you can put them on your MP3 players or your iPhones and stuff like that, if you want to listen to them in your car, which they sound amazing. That's kind of how I mixed them all, so I can put them in my car and blow my speakers up. But if you want them, shoot me a direct message. Obviously, it's No Shitcast. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook, YouTube, places like that. But shoot me a private message or direct message if you want. I'll throw you a link, and you can kind of go and pull these down. There's some other tracks in there, too, which I'm not going to cover today. But if you want them, they're there. The high audio quality board mixes, if you will, are available. You can kind of pull those down and give them a listen to. I don't sell any of this, and the reason I don't sell any of this is because the backing tracks I didn't write. I didn't necessarily record. Like I said, some of the music that I have out there, I did do all of it, but I'm lazy, so a lot of times I just like to plug my guitar in and just jam, and something interesting comes out of it, and I record it, and that's where these all come from. But this is no different. This next track is like I said, it all kind of comes back to the same place for me, and that's the blues. So this was one of those blues tracks that I was kind of horsing around with, and I really enjoyed sort of the way the vibe of it came out and the phraseology and stuff that's in the music. So again, this track is called Therapy. It's a blues track, and I hope you like it. So that's kind of it, folks. That's like I said, sort of my picks, Matt's picks, if you will. Songs I kind of thought sort of rose to the top, the cream rises to the top kind of situation. Appreciate you taking the time to listen, and certainly appreciate you guys continuing to download our podcast, my podcast here, and listening to it. If you get a chance, do me a favor, go out there and hit the like and subscribe button, especially on YouTube. I need some more subscribes on YouTube so I can get my channel. You have to have like over 100 or something like that subscribers on YouTube. I don't pay a lot of attention to YouTube. Unfortunately, I probably should pay more attention to it. I just sort of put the podcast up there and, whatever. My focus is definitely more on like iTunes and Spotify and the different places where most people kind of get their podcast audio from. But it would be kind of cool. I'd like to get the custom URL or the custom channel name for the No Shit Cast. So do me a favor, get over there on YouTube and hit the subscribe button for me. And again, thanks for listening, everyone. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this. It was just something I've been meaning to do for a while. I've been wanting to kind of put together and throw out there. If you guys want links to the spreadsheet that I was talking about earlier, if you have any questions about playing guitar or anything like that, by all means, shoot me a message. I'll get back to you. Direct message me on Instagram or Facebook, and I get back to people pretty quick. And thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch y'all next time. Bye, Sickles.